So today I'm going to talk about Midjourney again. Specifically, I'm going to talk about how I solved a problem for a project that I'm working on. So there are a couple things that I'm working that are kind of bigger long-term projects. I'm writing a novel, which is set in a sci-fi universe that I've created. I'm also running a role-playing game that's in that same universe. So one of the things I need for both the novel and the role-playing game is a nice detailed star map of the area where these stories are taking place. And I drafted one up and it was kind of rough. It was kind of janky. I didn't really love it. So I thought, I can probably do a much better map. It looks a lot nicer, it's more detailed, easier to read, and I can probably do it pretty fast because I can generate assets to use in that map using Midjourney. So this is kind of going to be a two-part episode of how I did that. This first part is going to look at Midjourney, and I'm going to talk about how to generate assets for something like this. This can be logos. This can be assets you're using in a video game. They can be assets you're using, like me, to make a map, to use as symbols and references. This can be something to use in photographs, like if you're doing a world dictionary or something like that, and you want to have a series of photos of certain things or places in your universe, you can use Midjourney for that. So this is just a way to generate those assets quickly. I'm looking at it from the perspective of I need assets that are small, that have a lot of variety and visual interest, that I can use in a map specifically. So these will be things I'm going to use as map symbols. And they need to have transparent backgrounds so that I can put them over other images. And if you're doing any kind of composite work or anything like that, generating a bunch of assets in this way can be very useful. So I'm going to walk you through that process. I'm going to show you how I did it, but it basically consists of about 10 steps. So first step is to really think about what you need. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want it to look like? Is there a particular style you're going for? Do you want black and white line art? Do you want photorealism? In my case, I just wanted some pretty planets that looked more like illustrations than photos. And when you're doing this, you want to brainstorm. This is really step two, is brainstorming keywords you're going to use. Because Midjourney, you have to give it prompts. It's an AI tool. So you have to give it instructions in plain English, and it will do its best to follow these instructions. But the more descriptive you can be, the more colorful adjectives and descriptions you give it, and the more specific your instructions are, the better it's going to do at its job. So you really want to think about what are those descriptors. What do I want things to look like? Is there a color palette? Is there a style? Anything like that you need to figure out. For my work, I also wanted to look at what's the aspect ratio? What shape do I want these objects that Midjourney is creating to be? So then step three is to go into Midjourney and start giving it prompts and seeing what it comes up with. I started out with a simple prompt, game asset, 2D illustrations of alien planets with swirling details and a variety of features such as rings, moons, clouds, land masses, showing the full disk of the planet evenly lit on a plain black background. Step four is just to keep iterating on that process. So if something comes up and it's not what you want, go back to your prompt, try rephrasing it, try retooling it. If it comes up with something you like, then iterate on that. Do variations on that image. Use that same prompt over and over again. Take that prompt and refine it, adding specific details that you want to see that aren't currently there. And you keep doing that until you have a set of images that you like. And then you can see what this looks like. Large variety of interesting things. But this panel here actually is really cool. I really like this red one with the cracked continents. Sort of like that Mars-like one. And so here's the look that I ended up actually liking the most, where they really do look like marbles. These are very spherical and have just a nice, really distinct look. In my case, before I downloaded them, I also did a thing called upscaling, where I have Midjourney create a higher resolution version of that picture. So I have a picture that I like, has the things I want in it, and then I say, okay, Midjourney, make a bigger, high resolution one. In post, I decided to go with 512 by 512 pixels. So I have a box that's 512 by 512 pixels, and I'm going to zoom each one of these little planets up into that size. And I didn't want it to be pixelated or grainy, so I upscaled in Midjourney, so it does the upscaling for me, gives me a nice, smooth, high-resolution graphic. And then when I zoom in on a smaller piece of it, I'm pretty much getting a full-size piece of art. I'm not having to do any sort of upscaling or worrying about any blurring or pixelation when I'm actually focusing in on the individual panels. And this is the same thing someone working on a video game would do. This is the same thing someone doing composite artwork would do. So I did the upscaling, then I downloaded everything. I'm calling that step 6. Then I'm calling that step 5. Step 5, download. Step 6 is to prune. Look at what you've got. Open it up, look at it on the big screen, swipe through those images, because Midjourney will probably crank out way more images than you actually need. You don't want to use all of them. You just want to use the good ones. So go through there. Anything that's janky, anything that's obviously AI, anything whose style doesn't fit your vision, delete, 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 until you get down to a small, manageable set. So now that you've got a pruned set of files on your computer, now you go through and do your post-processing. This is where you put them in some kind of graphics editor. That could be Photoshop. That could be Krita, which is free. It's nice in that respect. Could be really whatever tool you're comfortable using. And you're going to remove the backgrounds, and you're going to take and make individual assets out of whatever these frames look like. In my case, I ended up with this grid of planets where I had, I think, 4 or 5 across in 3 different rows. So I wanted to break out each one, put it in its own file, remove the background, and then you can also do any cleanup you want on the image. If you need to refine the mask for how it's removing the background, you can do that. If you want to change the color palette, you can do that. If there's some other stylistic element that you're adding so that everything's uniform in your art set, you do that. If there are other features or details you want to add, you can also add those in Photoshop or Krita by overlaying different symbols or whatever over the art piece. And so you go through and you start removing those backgrounds and you package these up as individual files. Now, depending on what you're using, having a directory with a bunch of individual files might be what you need. Or if you're making a video game or something, you might repackage those into whatever your, I don't remember what it's called, your art map or whatever, where everything's compressed into a single file and it knows kind of what section of that file to pull different images out of. Then step 9 is to use them. Go out, take the thing, use it. And step 10, as always, profit. So monetize whatever you're doing. Good luck with that. And that's the process. Now, a few tips and tricks along the way. So number one, it's important to have a goal before you start. If you just kind of randomly start exploring, you might go down a whole bunch of useless rabbit holes, get to the bottom, realize you spent an hour doing something that you're not going to use. You kind of have to throw away all that work, start over, spend another hour going down another rabbit hole. Don't want to do that. Have clear, well-defined goals. Even with this project, my goal was to have about 20 different symbols I could use on this map. 20 is not a big number. I probably could have knocked this out in an hour if I'd focused on that. But I opened up Midjourney, I started playing around with some prompts, I saw some interesting things, I started trying some other prompts. I deviated all the way into making vehicles, including spaceships, it's a science fiction environment, ground vehicles, including cars, utility vehicles, trucks, all sorts of things that I actually did not need for what I was doing. So have a goal, limit yourself, focus your time on what's really important. Second thing, look at different styles before you start. Look at different kinds of comic styles, art styles, photography styles, whatever, and get some of the keywords, some of the names of those styles. Understand what media you want, what format you want, if there's a particular art period that you want it to look like, or a particular art movement you want to mimic that style. Be sure to include all of that. Those are important to have in your prompts. And I guess another tip, which I already mentioned, don't get sucked down the rabbit hole. Limit what you're doing, kind of keep a boundary on it. When you get what you need, stop and just go on to the next step. And the other thing is, as you're going through this, I like to use a high level of randomization or a high level of chaos in my Midjourney art generation. So that I'm going to get a little quad of images, and all 4 of those images are going to be very different from each other. So by using a lot of randomness, I get a lot of different styles and a lot of different looks. When I find one I like, I'll often take an upscaled image of that, and I'll use that as a style reference by copying a link to that image and then putting it back into Midjourney using a command that's style reference or --sref, paste the link to that image, and then it'll look back at that image and it'll mimic that style. So I took this picture where we have these 3D marbles that look really cool. I applied that as a style using sref so that I would get that sort of 3D look. It also captured that color palette, which wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but I kind of went with for a while. And this was its first attempt. You'll notice that the color palette very much looks like those planets that were on the other picture. And in some cases, it almost sort of tried to give a rounded planetary look to them. But I liked what this came up with. An interesting variety of ships. Some of these look a little retro futuristic in their look and some of the features that are displayed. They don't really look modern or like real spaceships, but I thought they were interesting. Back to kind of the beginning to recap what we learned today. If you want to make assets for something like a video game, a map, anything else where you need a number of images that are similar in style that show some kind of content and then have a transparent background so you can put them over other images, use them in composites, that kind of thing. Think about what you're going to need and kind of define what your objectives are. Step 2, brainstorm on keywords, come up with descriptors that you want to use, styles that you want to use, those kind of things. Step 3, go into Midjourney and start prompting, start giving it instructions, see what it comes up with, and then just iterate on those. If something doesn't work, try rephrasing it, try describing it differently, try giving it more detail, and just iterate on that until you come up with something you like. Then after you download it, then prune your images. Go through them, get rid of the ones you don't like. Then remove the backgrounds using whatever tool you prefer. Package up the finished photos in whatever format is convenient for you, whatever you need for your use case. Then step 9, use it. And step 10, if you've done everything right, profit from that hard work and be grateful that Midjourney's there as a tool to save you a lot of time and effort. So I hope that helps. Talk to you later.